you ever had a dream that you had you could you do you you want you could do so you do you could you want him to do you so much you could do anything?
Well, I certainly have a dream, and it's called What If, the podcast about movies that don't exist. I'm Meg,
And I'm Steve.
and we're here recording our first episode for the podcast, What If. So, just a little bit about ourselves. I'm Meg, I'm 18 years old, and I do photography, videography, anything you want if you pay me, and I don't, let's take that back. I am a movie aficionado, I would call myself. I want to be a screenwriter, and this podcast is just a way to talk about screenwriting in movies. And I'm excited to get into it. How about you, Steve?
All right, I'm Steve, 22, recent college graduate.
Woo!
I took one intro to film class, so I believe that qualifies me to speak on a level of a critic.
Probably. You were in an acting class as well, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that was more theater, but I could still probably do any part you need me to if we need a stand-in clip that we don't have the rights to.
Yeah, totally. There's going to be a good amount of theatrics in this, so I believe you'll play that role very well.
Yeah, I'll try my darndest.
So getting into what we want with this show, basically the tagline is the show about movies that don't exist, and to extrapolate on that, we want to take pieces of media and pieces of history that we personally enjoy and kind of debate in the way that they would be made into a motion picture or a TV series.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably going to be mainly comic book, novel focused, other pieces of movies, other TV shows that we want to convert into different forms. So hopefully it's fun.
Now that we told you that, we are not going to do that for our first episode. Just to ease things in, we're going to be talking about our movie addiction, I would call it.
Yeah, some could say addiction, I guess.
A light addiction, probably. Basically, what we've been doing for a little over a year now is creating lists that are filled with movies that we would want to watch, and we try our darndest to watch all of them in that selected season. A lot of times, life gets in the way, and we do not finish all of them. But today we'd like to talk about kind of our process, what we've learned while doing this, and how it's kind of made us more knowledgeable about movies and screenwriting. And maybe we will convince you that we have some knowledge behind this in what we're talking about for our past podcasts.
Yeah, I think the list has been especially fun because there are so many great movies out there that it's impossible to see them all. But the list kind of forces you to list them all. List things, as we know. And it forces you to kind of do them. It sets it out as a goal. So it's kind of nice to be able to do that. A lot of the movies are just movies that we'd wanted to see, but some of them are also classic movies that we thought we should see. So there's sort of a mix of both.
And just to give the listener at home a picture of this, we have a wall in our kitchen that is a giant chalkboard, basically, and we have all the movies written down in very, very large font. And so every time you're sitting in the living room, it's kind of staring back at you and boring a hole into your soul.
Yeah, there's really no escaping the movie list.
There's no. It's always behind you.
Well, that's part of the charm.
Yes. So I think what we're going to do first is kind of talk about our past experience with these movie lists and how we kind of evolved over time and how we've done watching these movies. And maybe we'll talk about our favorites. Maybe we'll talk about recommendations we have, movies to not watch if you're doing something like this, because there are plenty of those. So as I've said, we started this around a year ago. Unfortunately, I don't have detailed lists of all of the sets that we've had, which brings us into our first kind of point in which we've talked before about always wanting to write down and catalog the movies that you have watched. I believe Steve brought this up to me, because just having that like past knowledge of all the movies that you've watched, so you can go back and think about them and create connections between different movies.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting just to, whenever you watch a movie, just write down the date and what movie you watched, and maybe like a brief description of it and how you felt about it, so you can see sort of how your tastes change over time. I also think it's kind of helpful just to remember the movies you have watched. If you look back, you can see what you were thinking about when that was going on. So I think that could be an interesting exercise if you really like movies and plan on seeing lots of them.
So that takes us to winter of 2019, starting around December of 2018. We created a list with a lot of different genres. We covered a lot, and that's kind of a point that I wanted to bring up, in that if you are going to do something similar than this, you have to kind of plot out your time well, because our original lists, they were very hefty. There was a lot on there, and when you have a list like of winter 2019, like I'm looking at now, with all of the Lord of the Ring movies, Spider-Man 3, Ex Machina, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's a lot of a lot of big commitments.
Very dense films.
Yes. And sometimes you just want to watch, like 2 movies a week and just like stew on them for a little bit, and not just have to watch Moon and then 2001 and then Get Out, and then like you don't want to do them all in succession. So when you're planning these out, I would suggest feeling the vibe of the season if you're doing it by seasons, and also kind of allotting for the time commitments and the emotional commitments as well.
Yeah, for sure. I like the fall movie list the best because that's mainly horror.
Yeah, the fall devolves into a lot of horror.
Evolves.
Yeah, it's debatable. And that's something we've been doing lately for the past 2 movie lists, is that we've made them shorter, more easily digestible in the amount of time that we have allotted. And we've started to get more into the analysis of genre, which I believe is an interesting topic that we should explore more on the show. But what we've been doing lately is tackling at least one movie from genres that we enjoy, and some that we don't particularly enjoy.
Yeah, that could be a good segue into reading the list that we have for summer 2019. So for horror, we're doing Psycho, and that also fulfills our old movie requirement. Old movies, we're typically considering like pre-60s, like probably 40s, 50s. So these are like really deeply classic. I don't actually know when Psycho came out. It might have been 1960, or perhaps later.
If it's in black and white.
But it's in black and white, so
yeah.
that definitely fulfills the old requirement. Additionally, horror, we're doing American Psycho, because I thought that paired nicely with Psycho. I don't actually know if they're related at all, but they have the same
have the same name.
And I do like Christian Bale. And
Yes.
I'd like to see him in more things. So that's the main reasoning behind that one. We've been doing a Western movie for the past couple of seasons. This time we're doing High Plains Drifter. That is considered a psycho Western.
Psycho Western.
Western.
There is a theme in this, and it is psycho.
Yeah, so there might be sort of 3 horror movies on the list so far, something I'm very excited about. Okay, next we're trying to do a documentary this time. This is something we've never done before. And for that, we'll be doing The Pixar Story. Partly because it's on Netflix and it's convenient to watch, and partly because Pixar is just interesting, and that could be fun.
And it's a very, like a palate cleanser after 3 horror movies that we have slated.
Yeah, so that should be cool. High Plains Drifter is going to be an interesting discussion, whether that's actually like full psychological or not. I'm really interested in the Western horror genre, something I recently heard about, so that could be an interesting first entrance into that. For our anime movie, we're trying to do My Neighbor Totoro by Studio Ghibli. So, Studio Ghibli, huge. You want to talk about that for a little bit?
Big fans. My Neighbor Totoro, if you want to go out and watch it, impossible to find on the internet, really.
Yeah, it was really hard to find, and we've been trying to watch all our movies through legal means,
Yes.
as in, like paying for them. Usually YouTube has pretty good selection of movies for like $4, so that's definitely doable. But My Neighbor Totoro, for some reason, was not on any of the major streaming services, like HBO, Stars, On Demand, YouTube. It wasn't anywhere.
Yeah, that's interesting. We could definitely go into a Studio Ghibli episode at one point in time if we want to talk about how they've kind of started and their studio policies and stuff like that. But just a tip, we got our copy from our local library, which is our second home, pretty much. If you ever want anything movies, I'd go and check your library, see if they have them. Very economical way to watch a lot of movies.
Yeah, I'm excited for My Neighbor Totoro because I've only seen Spirited Away from Studio Ghibli. I heard that Howl's Moving Castle, I think I got the name right on that, is also really good. So this could be interesting to see if it kind of works. Because this is kind of, I feel like Studio Ghibli is sort of like the Pixar of the East. If that makes sense. That might be a gross mischaracterization.
It's definitely a studio giant. I think, yeah.
I'm thinking in the sense that it's an animation studio that has a very distinct style and sort of is based on plot. You know,
Yeah.
very high concept pieces.
They do have a very specific genre in that if you didn't know the movie, you would know that it's by the same studio.
Yeah. So that could be interesting to see. Okay, up next, because it's summer, we're trying to do a big action blockbuster, and for that we'll be doing Mad Max Fury Road. I love that movie. I've seen it before. Have you seen it, Meg?
I have never seen Mad Max Fury Road, but from what I've gathered, I'm probably going to enjoy it because I do love senseless action.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. I think it's considered like one of the best sort of pure action movies in a while.
Uh-huh.
It came out before John Wick, though, so
Okay.
it'll be interesting to see your comparison between those. I mean, they're very different, but even still, they are kind of big summer blockbuster movies.
Yes.
That were considered sort of above the rest, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I do love some John Wick.
Yeah, who doesn't? You know what I mean? Okay, and then up next, our final genre, I guess, is just Asian.
Eastern movies.
Yeah, which is the opposite of Western.
Yes.
As we
that would be.
Yeah. And do you want to talk about that one a little bit, Meg?
So the movie we've chosen is, well, I've chosen and I'm forcing Stephen to watch, is The Killer. It is an action movie, considered one of the best Eastern action movies.
You said it was Chinese, right?
Chinese, I believe. And basically, what I've read today, off of the internet, is that it was created entirely without a script, just a general plot structure of where the movie was gonna go. Obviously, we haven't seen it yet, but it'll be interesting to see how it kind of sticks to or diverges from that traditional 3-act structure, which we all love so much, and we're going to talk about a lot in future episodes. So it's definitely going to be a talking point later when we kind of compare very, very strict constructions of scripts and very loose constructions of screenwriting.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in The Killer because I don't think I've ever seen a movie from China before. I guess I've never made it past the great filter.
Oh, yes.
So, but I've heard they have some really cool movies over there. So that'll definitely be interesting to check out.
Yes. And for anybody out there looking for good Eastern movie recommendations to just kind of go into that sort of genre, I guess you could say, Battle Royale definitely is a good stepping stone into there. A lot of violence, a lot of gore, if you're into that. But very, very good characters, very good plot. If you don't mind subtitles, I would recommend that one.
I guess if I were to recommend an Eastern film, it would be Old Boy. It's a Korean film. If you're a huge fan of Tarantino, you'll probably like this because Tarantino himself liked it and it was inspired by Tarantino. You gotta be in a weird mood though.
It's gotta hit you just at the right point.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind. Like, I want to see something a little bit disturbing. Then you might be in the right mood for Old Boy.
All right. We know we all get in those moods. So what I want to kind of talk about next is sort of like an examination of what we would consider to be genre. Stephen and I have been kind of talking about this recently. If genre kind of hinders or kind of pushes forward movies in general. So I believe you believe that genre might be too constricting.
Um, I like genre a lot. I consider myself a genre man.
Yes.
Just because I like how there's like defined tropes for every genre, and then every director sort of has a choice of playing up those tropes or playing down those tropes. I feel like you see this specifically in horror and western the most, which is why I'm sort of drawn to them right now specifically.
Yes.
Because I do think that horror has some of the most tropes out of any genre. We're talking like things such as going to a haunted house, everybody splitting up, going different places, things like that. Even like the monsters themselves can be considered kind of tropes, like zombie attacks and things like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's definitely interesting what we consider to be genre, because I feel like when the traditional view of genre is that like I'm going to a movie, it's going to be horror, it's going to be action, it's going to be rom-com, but we're kind of seeing now with a lot of indie directors and directors from across the globe, and people are just making more artistic films, that it kind of picks and chooses from different elements and different tropes across the board, creating almost a new sort of style of movie that's like a subgenre, if you will.
yeah, it's interesting with indie movies and just artistic movies in general because it's almost disingenuous to define them with genre, just because some of them it's like a purposeful avoidance of a general Hollywood style, and they're trying to be a unique thing. And for that reason, it's almost good to like not try to classify them with genre. So that's really where genre kind of falls down. I think is outside of major Hollywood movies.
Mm-hmm. I know in my personal experience with genre, with the screenplays that I write for fun, it's kind of hard to um, make something that is like pitchable without having like that set genre in like a Western sort of filmmaking point of view. In that, I want I want to make like a screenplay for a TV show, let's say, but I don't want to make it some teenage romance, or I don't want to make it some teenage horror TV show. I want to make it about specific stories, right? But it doesn't kind of like fit into any category. So like it's an interesting kind of debate that you have in your head, which is, am I making something that's coherent and kind of has a set place, or am I making something that's just jumbled mess?
Yeah, and I guess that's where it does help genre a lot. It's a great starting point if you're trying to create a script because you kind of have a set of rules inside a genre, and knowing the rules in a genre can help you really like play with them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can make something interesting only if you know the genre extremely well. So that's where genre I think is useful. Is knowing the tropes strong enough to know how to sort of deny them, how to use them effectively, and things like that. So.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point about tropes, in that I believe they can be successful both in playing into the trope and in avoidance of the trope, and which kind of makes it like this happens, like this certain thing is supposed to happen all of the time in horror movies, but if you subvert it, is that also a trope?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you're still, no matter what, you're still dealing with the trope. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're either working around it or working towards it. So, I mean, I think it's sort of like art, like making a painting. You know what I mean? Where you have to fully understand the rules of painting in order to completely disregard them and make something new. You know what I mean? And that's what made art so like shocking with like abstract art and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like either a rejection of the previously established rules, or it focused only solely on one and tried to really illustrate it well. So a movie can kind of work in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like choosing to use like a Wilhelm scream or not.
Yes.
It can be done tastefully and it can be done not tastefully.
Yes.
It depends on the movie.
Mm-hmm. I think in talking of tropes and knowing what's bad and knowing what's good, a tip when they give you when you take like any class about screenwriting or read any book about writing movies is that you need to watch and you need to read bad movies to know what a good movie is. So just knowing what not to do, kind of, you can take the opposite and do it better. And that's definitely, I do believe in that, and I do think that that's where kind of critics and reviews come in to play and how they are helpful. So, like, if a director wants to use...
Maybe we could talk about a movie we've seen recently. Like,
Yeah.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Which we just saw in theaters.
Yes.
What'd you think of that movie, Meg?
I thought, it was very blue and orange.
Yeah, I thought it was very boring.
It was very, like, your typical summer action blockbuster that kind of relied more on visuals than it did plot. But the thing is, the visuals weren't even that good.
Yeah. Then what's the point?
The story was incoherent.
Yeah, I really just didn't remember any of it. Even immediately coming out of the theater, I kind of just didn't absorb any of it. You know what I mean? And
yes.
So you sort of expect a little bit of that in the giant monster genre.
Yes, the giant monster genre.
We went into it knowing that we just wanted to see monsters crush buildings and weren't really thinking much more of it than that. But even then, I think that could have been better. You could have had more callbacks to like classic Godzilla, like a guy in a suit just fighting another guy in a suit. That's kind of what I want to see.
It was kind of suspended between, is this a serious movie or is this campy?
Yeah, if they'd leaned into one of them, it probably would have been better. I guess I was hoping for full camp myself.
Yes.
So, but I always like campy movies. I have a real soft spot for campy movies.
Yes, that's why we have the old movie thing on the list. Well, old movie can be an old action movie, which tends to be very campy, or it can be an old cinematic masterpiece. It depends on the season.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So going back to kind of learning from old movies, what we can learn about Godzilla is that dialogue matters more than kind of seeing Godzilla shoot rays into the sky.
Yeah, you know what I think? Like, the dialogue wouldn't have even mattered if they had just camped it up more. You know what I mean?
It would be interesting if there was zero dialogue in the film.
Well, yeah. No, I just need to hear people yelling about Godzilla. I mean, that's really
no, like conversations. I want a Godzilla movie that just follows Godzilla the whole entire time.
Just people reacting to Godzilla for 2 hours would be great.
Yes. No, like you see fighter planes coming up, but you don't really know who they are.
I don't need like some B-side like family story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't really need people to cause Godzilla to rise up. I just need Godzilla to be there. It could just start in the middle of the movie with Godzilla in the city.
Yeah.
That would be fine. Just basically just a montage of Godzilla.
That's what I want. I want like a Godzilla like road trip tour.
A road trip's heavy dialogue.
No, I want like he's going down the eastern seaboard and
you just want Godzilla.
Just stops at all the major stops.
Just Godzilla and just at the San Francisco like Golden Gate Bridge. Like
yeah,
in LA,
I want like postcards.
Times Square.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I guess that is the dream. What if? That's the title of the podcast.
What if?
What if Godzilla was just a montage of Godzilla in different places with no real connection between them? Yeah. That'd be nice.
The thing about Godzilla is that it almost had a love interest story between Godzilla and Mothra. Sorry if I'm spoiling this for anybody.
Yeah, that's actually something I could get behind. Because that's pure Godzilla drama.
It is. It's like when Mothra got kind of slammed against that one building. You felt that more than the family ripping apart in the movie.
Insane. Which is disappointing because I wanted to see... Millie Bobby Brown is her name, correct?
Yes.
From Stranger Things, 11. I wanted to see her do really well in that role, but it seemed like it was a fairly average role. Like, anybody could have done it. Any child actor could have done that role and it would have made a difference.
Yes. I do like Millie in Stranger Things. I think she has a penchant for horror, but I feel like the action genre didn't give her much to work with.
Yeah, but I guess it really doesn't for anybody.
It doesn't for anybody. She did the best she could.
So, but we can talk about child actors for a bit if you're interested.
Child actors.
We're probably
Sure.
living in the best time for child actors. That's my opinion.
We're living in a time where mothers and parents are very good at making child actors.
Yeah, you know, it seems like it was almost like the '80s was full of child actors, and then we've kind of weaned off that.
Hmm.
And then it's kind of back in rebound now. You know what I mean? I'm thinking movies like was Stand by Me in the '80s.
Stand by Me was the 80s, I believe. Yes,
That's what I'm thinking as like peak child actor film. And they've got
and like E.T.,
The Goonies, like The Sandlot,
Sandlot. Yeah,
stuff like that. E.T. Yeah, that's pure.
that's
The
prime.
movies were dominated by children.
That was the
back then.
silver era of
The silver
children
era
acting.
of children. Yeah, and now we're entering the golden era
Golden
of child
era.
acting.
Yes,
There was a big lull in Phantom Menace. Star Wars was a good one.
a lot of we also saw a lot of kind of adults playing children in early 2000s,
You think in early 2000s high school films?
like Degrassi, that a TV show.
Yeah, Degrassi, Mean Girls. Mean Girls is a great movie, but everybody's like 35 in that movie.
Yes, it's obvious too. It's kind of, we're getting into an era that I'm really enjoying. That it's high school and elementary school it's what it feels like in real life now more so.
Yeah, I guess Stranger Things seems to be the biggest catalyst of that also.
Yes, they put together this A-list lineup of unknown child actors that are just perfect for their roles, and that opened a door for it. And
Yeah, it also, phenomenal child acting in it, for sure. I feel like everybody in it's pretty much going to be acting forever. It seems like from then at least. So,
yes,
but maybe that's because it was set in the 80s.
yeah,
Kind of just like a callback. And Stranger Things is set
and
in the
Stranger
80s.
Things.
So maybe in order to have good child actors, things have to be in the 80s.
It needs to be a
period.
callback to the silver era.
Yeah, for sure. Which is almost sort of like playing on tropes once again, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Child actors in the 80s.
it all comes back to tropes and genre. And it's interesting that where we're seeing the most child actors and the best performance of child actors is the horror genre.
Yeah, come to think of it, I guess they are. The children are in a lot of horror movies just because they're creepy.
I think it's children are good in horror movies because it's a bastardization of innocence.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like,
Yeah.
You're thinking the Shining twins?
Yes,
Yeah.
I am thinking The Shining.
The Shining twins, in Sinister,
The Conjuring, I
all the
think, has
kids
a
were
little girl.
weird. The Conjuring, yeah. I imagine pretty much every modern horror film has some sort of kid evil.
A lot of Stephen King, definitely.
Yeah, a lot
Pet
of
Cemetery, Stand By Me.
Well, Stand By Me is not horror, but
Well, it's Stephen King.
it is Stephen King. Yeah, it's made by a horror auteur, but not necessarily horror.
And speaking of genre, speaking of Stephen King in general, it's another point that we want to kind of hit on is that what pieces, if we take a piece of literature, we take like a graphic novel or something like that, we want to explore what genre, if any, they would try to fit inside.
Like which? Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Like which genres do graphic novels hit the best?
Yeah.
Think?
So if we had a Batman graphic novel per se, would you want to lean full horror or would you want to lean full action or?
Well, I feel like every movie benefits from elements of horror. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Except for, I don't know. What do you think about? Remember the beginning of Suicide Squad,
Mm-hmm.
where Batman is kind of like scary and he's scaring all the villains. I thought
Sure.
that was a cool concept, right?
Mhm.
At one point, he jumps into the river
Yes.
to go after, I think, Joker.
Harley Quinn and Joker, yes.
Yeah, and he's got like a real scary face, like it's a CGI, like it's green and like his mouth is open big and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that was an interesting idea. It was Suicide Squad, so it could have been executed better.
Yeah. I mean, Suicide Squad had a lot of ideas, but it did not have a lot of execution.
I know, because I really like the Suicide Squad, and I think everybody on the planet would have liked to have seen that movie done better.
Yes.
Hey, did you know that apparently all of it was like recut by the company that made the trailer, like right before?
The company that made a trailer.
Yeah, because the trailer like was really successul, and so.
Oh, the Bohemian Rhapsody trailer, yes.
I think so. Yeah, the classic rock Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah,
Yeah. They actually re-edited the movie, the trailer company. and so people were thinking that that's largely a part of the reason it didn't do as well.
Okay.
I think they just added a lot of like classic rock and stuff like that, and the story
That
made
is
less
interesting.
sense because they cut out some important plot points.
Yes, and I think Jared Leto expressed his disappointment over.
Yeah,
that.
I don't really care about what Jared Leto has to say. You know what I mean?
Jared Leto's Joker was definitely let down, but can he be let down if he had zero expectations? You know?
Yeah, the issue is that I did have big expectations, and that really,
I had
was crushing for me to see that movie.
I had big expectations for Suicide Squad itself, but I feel like Jared Leto was pretty much always a mistake in the Joker realm.
I guess in the design specifically.
I hate his grills. I hate his tattoos.
Yeah, but maybe just attempting to hire another method actor to play the Joker was just a huge oversight. Like, I don't understand how that could have happened. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think method acting is necessary to play kind of involved characters such as the Joker.
Yeah, and this is something I'll bring my college learning into play in. We talked about this in my acting class a little bit about method acting. Essentially, my teacher thought that method acting is just totally sort of unnecessary and wrong. Like, you shouldn't actually have to be a drug addict or feel like a drug addict in order to play a drug addict. Like, it's called acting because you're not what you are. You know what I mean? You're playing something different than yourself. So it's almost like not as good acting. You know what I mean?
If you have to turn yourself into the character, you're not playing the character anymore.
Yeah.
You are that person. And that's not technically like acting in the way that we traditionally think, in that you have to completely change your personality for the screen.
Yeah. It's like destructive, you know what I mean? Like, you're not yourself if you're acting. If you're fully immersed in the character you are. Like, I feel like you should have some awareness of who you are even when you're acting. You can still be a good actor. You can still go home at night and enjoy life.
Give a kiss to your wife.
You know what I mean?
Play with your kids outside.
You don't have to send boxes full of dead rats to people if you're playing Joker.
Yeah.
Like Jared Leto did.
I feel like that's just something Jared Leto wanted to do, and he was just like, all right, I'm playing the Joker now.
So you think he auditioned for that role purposefully to...
He had like a rat problem in his house. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we're almost pushing 40 minutes, so let's try a segment that we want to incorporate into the show. Basically a speed round is what we're thinking, and Steve and I are going to go back and forth at least once a person, and we are going
one back and 1/4.
One back, 1/4, and
minimum.
then we're done. And we're going to basically pitch movies together. We're going to try to convince the other person in a very short amount of time that we are the studio execs and we should buy their movie.
Yeah, that sounds great to me.
So today we've talked about trope, we've talked about genre, we've talked about subversions of both of those things. Suicide Squad was in there, and all of our past movies. So let's take inspiration from those. And would you like to start, or would you like me to start?
I would love to start. I have a good one all planned out.
Great.
Okay. You know how Suicide Squad sort of leaned into Guardians of the Galaxy already?
Yes.
What if we had the director of Guardians of the Galaxy direct a Suicide Squad movie?
Huh. Wait, I don't think that would ever happen.
Yeah, if we could get James Gunn to come in, do a soft reboot, I think we'd get a perfect movie.
Okay.
Totally axe Killer Croc. We don't really need him.
We don't need Killer Croc.
Yeah, or just redo his character entirely.
What about Dave Bautista as Killer Croc? Would you like that?
Yes.
Yes.
How about Dave Bautista as Killer Croc?
Mm-hmm.
The actress who played Gamora, what was her name?
Zoe Saldana.
What if she was playing Harley Quinn?
She gets Harley Quinn.
Chris Pratt, of course, as he could be
Slipknot,
but he wouldn't die instantly.
But Slipknot would get the titular role, basically. It would be a Slipknot movie.
Yeah. And then Groot. And then I think we'd have a good team.
It's Groot, but not Vin Diesel?
It's just Groot. It's Vin Diesel playing Groot, but...
Oh, okay.
It's Groot.
It's Groot.
It's a crossover.
It's a crossover. The biggest crossover event in modern history? So
basically just the Guardians of the Galaxy in the plot of Suicide Squad movie.
Okay, so you want a heist... No, well, we wanted a heist movie. We wanted... So the government is sending the Guardians of the Galaxy into a foreign planet.
Yeah, and maybe they'll also run into maybe Spider-Man, Thor, and
Rick
Hulk
Flag.
on the way.
And are they
And
trying to
Marvel.
stop?
It's in the
like,
Marvel Cinematic
It's in the
Universe.
and they're trying to stop Thanos from getting the Infinity Stones.
Yeah, and they're trying to prevent Thanos from getting the Infinity Stones. Yeah, I think that would be a great movie.
Yeah, but there's bombs in everyone's heads.
Yeah.
Or no? Yes.
No, I think we can get rid of that.
We can get rid of the
I
bombs.
think we can make it more classic Marvel.
More
you know
family fun.
Yeah.
More okay.
Rated G.
Rated G.
Yeah, no violence at all.
So
Too
no
violent.
violence. Suicide Squad was
Far too violent.
And James Gunn, very good family director.
But in all seriousness, I am very excited for Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
I do think
I
that
mean Suicide Squad 2. I did actually mean Suicide Squad 2. I wasn't trying to make a joke there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be very good. I think I'm glad that he's back on both Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It was heaven sent, basically, that worked out the way it did.
Yeah. Essentially what DC said was, they tried to do what our podcast is doing. They said, what if we could do a huge ensemble superhero movie, but without any backstory for anybody?
Yeah.
Or having them be relatable characters. Or having them connect with each other. Or having a plot.
Okay, yeah, that's what I want.
So.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to seal that one in, send it to the studio.
Okay, great.
And it's going to be hard pressed. Yeah, no, that's what I am. So I guess that we're going fourth then, and it's my turn.
Yeah.
So, basically, we were kind of thinking on the same lines. I want a, Taika Waititi directed movie. What if we had a Taika directed movie, all anti-heroes, not in any established universe, and they are trying to steal something, but they are not controlled by the government. They do not have bombs in their head. They are doing this by their own pension, and they come together for a greater good, in which is a greater good for criminality.
That's interesting. So Suicide Squad, but they're sort of just what's their end goal?
They
just want to advance the criminal profession.
Yes, criminals are. If you know the Flash rogues, the street level ones are like the silly kind of DC villains. They are the world's just flooded with them, and superheroes they're too strong, they're too overpowered, they're too popular. And these guys want to get criminals back on their feet.
Get them on the map.
Get them on the map by stealing the most important prized jewels or whatever from the most powerful superhero in the world. They want to make themselves known with the greatest heist known to man.
Yeah, that's something to be said that Meg and I really enjoy heist movies. I don't think I've seen a heist movie that I haven't enjoyed so far. Like, for example, Inception I really like.
Inception, very good.
Mind Heist.
Heist. Endgame, the time heist.
Yeah, that's another time heist, I guess. There's time heist, there's mind heist, hurricane heist.
We
don't like that
one. Cold Pursuits.
Cold Pursuit actually looked pretty decent.
That was Liam Neeson, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, Liam Neeson driving. He was a snowmobile operator.
Oh, well, at least it's different.
People down. Yeah, that one actually seemed kind of funny. That was full camp, though, because they had a kill count on the screen the whole time.
Oh, fantastic.
That, flashed on every...
So you don't have to count it on your fingers.
Yeah. That actually sounds like a fun movie.
That's a lot of fan service. Not having them have to count on their theaters. Yeah, so what's your final verdict on my anti-hero criminality booster movie?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to allow it, but tentatively.
Tentatively.
It depends on what the studio is that's making it, you know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Because you're really going to have a good team. Taika Waititi is great, but I feel like his stuff is typically the movies that he wants to make. You know what I mean?
It's going to be hard getting him on board.
You'd have to get his approval.
Yeah.
If you could get him on board with it,
if I can call Taika up right now,
then absolutely.
Okay.
But if Zack Snyder's on the case, then I'm probably gonna have to give it a no.
And you know what? That's understandable.
Yeah.
I respect that. All right. So that's the end of our first show. How do you feel?
I feel pretty good, Meg. once we get the sponsors in, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, and our show might last an actual hour if we get the sponsors in.
So this is probably when people are going to be looking back and thinking, wow, look how like young they sound and how like less their equipment was when they're like, well, because probably when we do our 500th episode, we'll say everybody should go back and watch the first one.
Yeah.
As like a little memorabilia thing. And by then we'll be in like our space studio.
Yeah, we'll be directly transmitting from
It'll probably be like a holographic podcast, I would imagine. So people
Yeah,
are
like-
going to look back and think like, wow, this was really the stone age of podcasting.
a live VR experience, basically. Is what
Yeah,
it's gonna be.
projected into your living room.
Yes, from space. Yeah, this I assume this clip is going to be taken out and posted on YouTube with the title first episode of What If.
Yeah, or maybe just like the first real podcast, or the first start of human podcasting.
The podcasting genre.
The podcasting genre really kicked off here, and everything else was sort of the proto podcast.
Yes.
That's how I think it went today.
Yeah, you know what? I do agree. I'm gonna seal that one, send it to the studio.
Okay, cool. I didn't know. Is that a pitch?
You were pitching the podcast to me, and I really enjoyed it. So
okay, great.
I'm gonna send it to the studio.
It's good to know. Because if you don't like it,
then it's over. I own the microphone.
Yeah, the person with the mic doesn't like it, then the mic's gone.
Yes. All right. So I'm Meg. Thanks for listening. We really enjoy the support. And you know what? Goodbye. Have a good day.
Yeah, as always, I'm Steve. I'd like to thank our sponsors, and thanks for listening, everybody.
All right. Bye.